so beautiful here.
Let's check this place out. Look, the spirit box is already picking up something. Whoa, did you see that shadow move? Let's get a photo, quick!
I can feel something here. Let's see what the spirits say. Almost there.
What is this place? Hello? Is anyone there?
Wow, this place is creepy. I know. Let's get the gear. Got the spirit box? Whoa. Flashlights on. Look at the mist. Ready? Let's go. Memento mori. Remember, we are mortal. The spirits are restless tonight. Let's get this done. Stay sharp. The night is ours.
Guys, we are here to help solve a 200-year-old mystery. Make every moment count. Remember that when it's all said and done. Memento mori.
It's so beautiful here.
This place is bigger than I'd imagined.
White Hill Mansion rises above the Delaware River like a memory that refuses to fade, its silhouette etched against the sky with the quiet authority of a place that has witnessed centuries of human struggle and resilience. The brickwork, weathered by storms and seasons, carries the subtle imprint of every hand that ever touched it, from the earliest builders to the preservationists who fought to keep it standing. Inside, the floors creak with the weight of stories that have settled into the wood grain, stories of families who loved and lost, soldiers who marched through uncertainty, and travelers who sought refuge within its walls. The mansion does not shout its history, it murmurs it, offering fragments to those willing to listen. The air inside feels thick with the residue of time, as if the building itself has absorbed the emotions of those who lived here. Every corner seems to hold a whisper, every shadow a memory, and the house stands not as a relic, but as a living archive of human experience. Its presence is both comforting and unsettling, inviting visitors to step closer while reminding them that some stories linger long after the people who lived them have gone. The mansion's quiet dignity suggests that it has more to say, if only someone will ask the right questions. And so, the narrative begins where all haunted histories begin, with the land, the people, and the echoes they left behind. Long before the mansion took shape, the land itself held significance, serving as a vantage point overlooking the river's shifting currents and the trade routes that connected early settlements. Indigenous communities once moved through this area, leaving behind traces of their presence in the soil and the stories passed down through generations. When European settlers arrived, they recognized the strategic value of the hill, building homes and farms that would eventually give rise to the structure that stands today. The earliest records speak of a modest dwelling, expanded over time as families grew and fortunes changed. Each addition to the house reflected the aspirations and anxieties of its occupants, creating a patchwork of architectural styles that mirrored the evolving identity of the region. The Revolutionary War brought turmoil to the area, and the mansion's hilltop position made it silent witness to the movements of soldiers and the fears of civilians caught in the conflict. Though the house itself was not a battlefield, the emotional weight of the era seeped into its walls, leaving behind a residue that would shape its atmosphere for centuries. The story of Mary and Robert Field marks one of the earliest emotional anchors in the mansion's history, a narrative of love, loss, and resilience that continues to echo through its halls. Robert, a respected figure in the community, became entangled in the political tensions of the Revolutionary War, his loyalties questioned and his fate sealed by forces beyond his control. His sudden death left Mary alone with their children, navigating a world that had become increasingly uncertain. The grief she carried settled into the house like a dark shadow, shaping the emotional landscape of the rooms she once filled with laughter. Visitors often speak of a lingering sadness in certain areas of the mansion, a heaviness that seems to cling to the air like an energy vampire, and many believe it is Mary's sorrow that remains. Her story is not one of despair, but of endurance. Just like pictures of White Hill's yesteryear that hang upon the mansion's walls, the emotional imprint of her life continues to resonate. As the years passed, the mansion changed hands, each new owner leaving behind their own emotional signature. During the early 19th century, the house became a gathering place for travelers moving along the river, offering food, shelter, and companionship to those seeking rest. The atmosphere during this period was lively, yet beneath the surface, there were tension-fueled financial struggles, personal conflicts, and the quiet desperation of those trying to build a life in a rapidly changing world. Some visitors reported feeling watched as they moved through the house, as if the walls themselves were observing, taking a snapshot of their movements with every blink. Others spoke of sudden chills or the sensation of being touched by unseen hands. Sudden gusts of hot and cold drafts occurred, especially on the back of the neck. Some experienced whispers in their ears suggesting that they performed some of the most hideous things they'd never thought of doing before. One night during a group tour of the mansion, one of the members, Mr. Clemens, was suddenly approached by what he described as a spirit. It whispered in his ear, suggesting he pull a dark prank on another group member. Mr. Clemens claims to this day that he refused, but moments later, he and the rest of the tour group were horrified as they watched another member perform that very act. The tour guide, Mrs. Desmond, had to be taken away in an ambulance for medical treatment. She recovered, but just like Mr. Clemens, she and the White Hill Mansion tour group became haunted by that moment, and victory went to White Hill as it claimed more malevolent attachments to unsuspecting souls. The funny thing is that if you were to ask Mrs. Desmond about the incident that took place that dark, cold night, she would not be able to say a word because she doesn't remember it at all. When interviewed by a local paper reporter about her experiences, Mrs. Desmond recalled the incident as if she were one of the tour group members and not the guide. She recalled Mr. Clemens experiencing something odd, and suddenly he began to shout with anger, swearing to everyone in the group that he would get back at all of them for what they did to him. Eyes red, nostrils flared, breath hot and rapid, with his hands balled into fists, Mrs. Desmond told the reporter that Mr. Clemens stated he would have his revenge because they all stole his money. The next thing she recalled was Mr. Clemens clenching his chest, placing his hand over his heart, and fainting. She called the ambulance, and they took him away to the hospital, claiming he suffered a mild heart attack but recovered a couple of days later. The newspaper reporter was horrified to learn upon investigation that it was, in fact, Mrs. Desmond who had suffered a mild heart attack that night and was admitted to the hospital. The reporter also found out from 911 call logs that it was Mr. Clemens who called the ambulance because Mrs. Desmond fainted after a terrible rant session that no one could explain. These experiences, though subtle and creepy, hinted at the emotional residue accumulating within the mansion. Like the roots of a tree, it was becoming a vessel for the stories of those who passed through it. The arrival of Commodore Thomas Reed added a new layer of historical significance to the mansion, connecting it to the broader narrative of American naval history. Red brought with him a sense of discipline and purpose that contrasted sharply with the emotional turbulence of earlier years. Visitors during this period reported hearing footsteps in empty rooms or seeing fleeting shadows near the staircase. Phenomena that Red himself dismissed as drafts or tricks of the light, but those who lived in the house knew better. They felt the subtle shifts in temperature and timelines, the sudden stillness that settled over certain rooms, the sense that someone or something was always nearby. Some believe they experienced a quantum leap and cases of the Mandela effect, while others claimed déjà vu with a feeling that they'd been to White Hill Mansion before. By the late 19th century, the mansion had become a social hub. The dining room, once a place of quiet family meals, now echoed with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Yet beneath the surface, there were whispers of secret relationships formed in the shadows, diabolical deals struck behind closed doors, and moments of vulnerability. Some visitors reported feeling their hair being pulled by an unseen malevolent force when no one else was present. The early 20th century brought further changes, transforming it into a restaurant and social venue. The basement bar, with its low ceilings and intimate atmosphere, became a focal point for gatherings. The energy in this space was vibrant, yet tinged with an undercurrent of tension. Staff members reported hearing their names when no one else was present, or seeing objects move without explanation. As the decades progressed, the mansion fell into despair, its once vibrant rooms filled with dust and shadows. Residents spoke of seeing lights flicker in the windows at night, or hearing faint music drifting from the basement, even though the building had been abandoned for years. Preservation efforts led by local historians and volunteers marked a turning point, breathing new life into the aging structure. As work progressed, volunteers reported experiencing strange phenomena, tools disappearing and reappearing in unexpected places, sudden drops in temperature, and the sensation of being watched. The rise of paranormal investigation teams in the early 21st century brought new attention to the mansion. Investigators reported capturing EVPs, shadow figures, and unexplained movements. Among the most compelling investigations was one conducted by Loretta Kelly, whose experience in the basement bar became a defining moment. During an EVP session, she captured a clear response to her question, a voice that seemed to speak directly to her. As more investigators visited, a pattern emerged. Certain rooms seemed to hold specific emotional signatures. The dining room carried warmth and nostalgia, while the upstairs bedrooms felt heavy with sorrow and longing. The basement bar held a complex mix of emotions that shifted depending on who entered the room. As the factual history of the mansion unfolds, the narrative reaches a threshold moment where the documented past stands fully illuminated, and the emotional architecture of the house feels complete. The investigators, historians, and preservationists have all contributed to a tapestry of memory that seems to vibrate beneath the surface of the old wood. Imagine, for a moment, a different kind of night at White Hill Mansion. A night when the emotional anchors, paranormal investigators Marie Jackson and Amy Bruni, step into the mansion not as observers, but as interpreters of its deepest wounds. A night when the Ghost Brothers, Dalen Spratt, Joanne Mass, and Marcus Harvey, arrive with their humor, heart, and readiness to deliver incredible commentary. A night when ghost hunters Sam and Colby, wide-eyed with inquiring minds and fascination, step into the darkness with cameras rolling, unaware that this investigation will test them. A night when Colin Browen, cinematic and introspective, feels the mansion's emotional weight settles on his shoulders. A night when Zach Bagans enters with intensity, challenging the mansion to reveal its truth. The night would also bring the echoes of Harry Price and Hans Holzer, the pioneers, the legends stirring in the air as if their spirits themselves have returned to witness what unfolds. This is where the documentary becomes a cinematic haunting. This is where the past and present collide. The night begins quietly, with the river moving in slow, dark currents below the hill, its surface reflecting only the faintest suggestion of moonlight as clouds drift across the sky like restless thoughts. White Hill Mansion stands in silhouette, its interior waiting. The first car pulls up along the narrow road and Marie Jackson steps out. She pauses for a moment, looking up at the mansion, like a pendulum. Marie scopes her surroundings to report any highly predictable and constant rhythmic motion that White Hill has. Taking notes on the many who have testified about losing track of time, she takes scientific measurements while standing by an old, large tree, her hand placed upon the trunk as she looks up at its vast branches, searching for kinetic energy. Marie wonders how many horror stories this tree could tell if it could talk. Amy Bruni joins her, emerging with a quiet steadiness. her eyes scanning the structure with the practiced sensitivity of someone who has spent years listening to the emotional echoes of the dead. A second vehicle arrives, and the doors open to reveal the Ghost Brothers. Dalen looks up at the structure and lets out a low whistle, acknowledging the weight of its history with a simple, "Man, this place has seen some things." Juan laughs softly, but his eyes are serious. Marcus adjusts his gear, his movements efficient but relaxed, carrying the grounded energy that often anchors their investigations. A third vehicle arrives, and Sam and Colby emerge. Their expressions are a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Sam looks up at the mansion and feels a familiar flutter of anxiety in his chest, pulling his courage from being a daredevil to quiet his unease. Colby takes a slow breath, grounding himself as he checks for the aura of White Hill, deciding if it is safe to enter. The fourth arrival is marked by the deliberate footsteps of Colin Browan. He pauses at the base of the hill, taking in the mansion's silhouette with the contemplative stillness of someone who sees stories in the spaces between shadows. Finally, a steady engine hums through the quiet as Zach Bagans steps out. His driver just stares ahead, remaining inside the luxury charter bus. He surveys the mansion with a gaze that is both analytical and challenging, as if daring the building to reveal its secrets. His team adjusts his equipment as he adjusts his prism glasses, his focus unwavering. Setting up their nerve center in the grand hall, the star-studded team establishes their baseline. To understand the psychological trap they have walked into, they must unpack the anatomical history of the estate. Zach and Marie lay out the case files, speaking the history aloud, unaware that by naming the ghosts, they are waking the house. The story begins in 1760 with Elias Thornton, a prosperous merchant by day, but a man obsessed with the occult by night. His wife, Margaret, ran a boutique as a seamstress, attempting to maintain normalcy while Elias terrified their housekeepers with late-night seances. The team reviews the bloodline. Elias's obsession was inherited from his father, Seth, who practiced the dark arts alongside the notorious Antoine Coeur de Gebelin. The darkness ran deep. Elias's mother had perished under highly mysterious, horrific circumstances during a ritualistic bonfire in the woods of southern France. Embittered by the dark arts, she despised Margaret, vowing that any children born to the couple would be cursed, refusing to ever act as a grandmother. When Seth died, he passed down a corrupted, treasured tome to Elias, Heaven and Hell, written by a Swedish theologian and scientist turned mystic. Elias obsessed over his father's highlighted passages, using the visions of the afterlife to turn Willow Hill into a spiritual battery. Margaret feared the book was cursed, but before she could destroy it, Elias mysteriously drowned in the Delaware River in 1775. The Revolutionary War followed, bringing British invasions to the manor as Margaret hid colonial officers. The turbulence of war, combined with the occult foundation, embedded restless, volatile spirits into the very walls. As the team configures their EMF meters and spirit boxes, Colin Browan and the Ghost Brothers cross-reference the modern hauntings. They discuss the pioneer investigations of Harry Price and Hans Holzer, the father of the paranormal. Decades ago, Price and Holzer used rudimentary recorders in the manor's basement, the former site of an upscale 1920s restaurant owned by Hinrich Voss. Holzer's notes detailed how Hinrich's spirit confessed to an illicit poker game that ended in a shootout, claiming the life of his younger brother, Henry. Holzer also recorded Eliza, a French servant and spirit rider who offered a one-way trip to the other side. The team connects these pioneer findings with recent, terrifying escalations. They discuss the infamous ghost tour where Mr. Clemens was whispered to by an entity, resulting in Mrs. Desmond suffering a severe heart attack and memory wipe. They review the 2010 footage of Clara and James Whittaker, who toured the home with the Riverbend mayor. James woke up feeling incredibly rested with no memory of the night, while Clara was found paralyzed, her body aching as if she had been in a physical altercation. Finally, they recount the 2023 Paranormal Expo, where novice Sarah Mitchell and seasoned investigator Daniel Harper witnessed a teammate violently shoved out of a bathroom while a doppelganger left a fatal death threat on a voicemail. The realization settles over the foyer like a shroud. Willow Hill Manor does not just haunt. Through Elias's occult architecture, it practices destiny swapping. It steals timelines, health, and futures. Armed with this terrifying context, the team splits up, stepping deeper into the dark. The group ascends the front steps in a slow, deliberate procession, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder with each step, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and aged timber. When Marie finally pushes the heavy wooden door open, the hinges groan in protest, and a wave of cold air spills out, carrying with it the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Inside the foyer, the air feels dense. Slowly raising his iPhone to his mouth, Zach asks one of his crew, "Are you picking up any activity?" Marie leads the way toward the dining room. The room feels warm, regardless of the tall ceiling and massive chandelier, filled with the echoes of shared meals that once brought families together. Yet beneath the surface lies a subtle tension. The sound of footsteps echoes through the hallway outside, slow and deliberate, as if someone is pacing just beyond the doorway. The group turns toward the sound. Mare notices dark shadows from the corner of her eye as she fixes her gaze upon a large picture hanging on one of the dining room walls. Stepping closer to examine the picture, which was more like a mural due to its enormous size, Mare notices a woman with long, blood-red hair and freckles, standing with 3 small children by her side. Marie couldn't shake the feeling that they all were looking at her as time between them seemed to fade. Mare stepped closer and felt as if she could have stepped into the large picture to greet the woman and her 3 children. That's Margaret and her children. Amy walked up and stood next to Mare. What did she say to you? What do you mean, what did she say? Do you smell that? Mary was startled by her own voice as she was snatched out of her trance while staring at the mural. A child's laugh could be faintly heard in the distance. Mare continued to examine the large picture that seemed to take up the entire wall. Margaret seemed to be standing closer because her image somehow seemed larger than before. As Amy turned to examine other parts of the dining room, she could hear Mare ask Margaret, "How did you manage to take care of them after he'd left for the war?" Footsteps continued, growing louder, and then stopped abruptly. Zach steps into the hallway, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Guys, I think that I've got something here," he says. The air grows colder, and a faint figure begins to take shape at the far end of the hallway, a shadowy silhouette that flickers like a candle flame. As it draws closer, its form becomes clearer. A man in old-fashioned clothing, his features blurred but recognizable. Marie feels a surge of recognition, loneliness, regret, and a deep longing for connection. She speaks softly, acknowledging the figure's presence, inviting it to share its story. A faint whisper drifts through the air, the words barely audible but unmistakably human. The figure flickers, its form growing fainter, and then slowly begins to fade, the shadows receding as the air grows warmer. The group descends the stairs into the basement bar. A sudden cold breeze sweeps through the room, though no windows are open, and the temperature drops sharply enough that Sam shivers and instinctively lifts his camera phone to scan the basement. Stepping closer to Colby, Sam whispers that he saw Sally as they were coming down the steps. A faint tapping sound echoes from the far end of the bar, rhythmic and deliberate, like fingers drumming lightly against wood. The group turns toward the sound, their flashlights sweeping across the room in slow arcs that reveal nothing but shadows and dust. The tapping stops abruptly. The silence deepens, and then a faint whisper drifts through the air, single word, fragile and broken. A faint glow begins to form, soft and wavering with the sound of a little girl's giggling. It pulses softly, expanding and contracting like a heartbeat, before slowly beginning to fade, leaving behind a lingering warmth. Colby looks over at Sam. "You good, bro?" Sam shakes his head and they continue to investigate. Marie, Amy, and Colin Browen ascend the grand staircase to the oldest wing of the house, the master bedroom of Elias and Margaret. The moment they cross the threshold, the physical environment violently rejects them. The temperature plummets so rapidly they can see their breath plummeting in the flashlight beams. A bouquet of decorative flowers on a vanity instantly shrinks, withering into black, dead husks. Amy approaches the ensuite bathroom. Suddenly, the sound of a shower running echoes from the plumbing, complete with splashing water and faint, eerie whistling. Amy stands frozen before the antique mirror as water begins to drip down the glass. Paralyzed by an overwhelming psychic pressure, she and the team watch in sheer horror as a parallax reflection of Amy moves independently. The reflection smiles, raises its non-dominant left hand, and begins writing across the glass in blood-red lipstick, spelling out a cryptic message in French. "You won't find anything because she won't let you," Colin asked. "Who are you?" With a distinct French accent, the voice answers, "Spirit Rider." Breaking paralysis with sheer willpower, Marie activates a localized spirit box. Through a storm of static, the fragmented, residual echoes of Elias's mother pour into the room, confirming the bloodline's curse. The house is showing Amy the destiny it is trying to force onto her, attempting to trap her consciousness behind the glass. "You won't find anything, it'll find you." Colin asks, "What does that mean? Who will find us? Are you going to hurt us?" Amy's reflection in the mirror turns to Colin as her voice changes into a deeper, more raspy tone. The French accent disappears. "You just made a big mistake by coming here. It will cost you." Colin responds with, "Why should we be afraid of you?" There was just silence after that. Down a pitch-black, separate corridor, Sam and Colby navigate the oppressive silence. Colby, highly attuned to spiritual frequencies, senses the dense predatory trap forming around them. He stops, taking a crucial, deliberate moment to ground and shields his energy, warning his partner to stay back. Sam, however, leans into his daredevil instincts, stepping further into the darkness to investigate a sudden drop in temperature. Sally follows close behind. Colby notices sudden movements around Sam as the darkness engulfs him and wonders if Sally is helping or harming their investigation. Suddenly, Colby's phone vibrates in the dark. The caller ID displays Sam's name. Colby answers, and a fiery, hot breath exhales through the speaker. A twisted, mocking version of Sam's voice laughs manically, detailing a horrific, fatal car accident that the news will soon report if they do not surrender to the house. To keep calm, Colby recalls that paranormal investigator Sarah Mitchell and one of her teammates had a similar experience a few years ago. At that exact moment, down the hall, the real Sam is thrust violently against the wall. A massive, featureless shadow man glides out of the darkness, bringing with it a highly unpleasant, suffocating odor of river rot and smoke. Icy, invisible hands wrap around Sam's throat, shoving him backward as the entity attempts to force the timeline swap. Hearing the physical struggle, Colby drops the phone and rushes around the corner, physically grabbing Sam and breaking the psychic connection just before Elias's dark architecture can steal his partner's timeline. Colby hears another alert on this phone, a text message that said, "You need to have more faith in my ability to either help or to harm you. Our world has a revolving door. I'm warning you by reminding you that what happened to Sarah Mitchell could happen to you. Signed, Sally." Colby shows Sam the text message. Sam responds with, "She does this all the time with me. It's not a big deal." Then suddenly a faint little girl's giggle could be heard. It was at that time that Colby decided that Sally was there to help them with their paranormal investigation. Colby then detected a dark shadow from the corner of his eye dart from across the room. The scattered teams, breathless, aching, and deeply unnerved by the psychic assaults, regroup at the top of the basement stairs. They realize the house is actively trying to rewrite their realities, using their own voices, empathy, and daredevil curiosity against them. Refusing to be hunted, Zach Bagans, his dedicated crew, and the Ghost Brothers take the offensive. They lead the entire team down the narrow, creaking stairs into the basement bar to confront the core of the occult energy. They deploy a massive array of sensory equipment in the damp, cavernous space. Almost immediately, the room erupts with the residual chaos of the 1920s. Phantom chairs scrape violently against the wooden floors. The distinct sound of firecrackers, or gunshots, pops in the distance. The ghostly chatter of Hinrich Voss echoes off the stone walls, reliving the poker game and the shootout. For a terrifying moment, the apparition of a waitress in a French-made uniform flickers into existence, appearing to take an order before vanishing right before their eyes. Then, just as Harry Price and Hans Holzer experienced decades prior, the residual noise is abruptly severed by a suffocating dead silence. The spirit box crackles to life. The French-accented voice of Eliza, the spirit rider, fills the room. Her tone is deceptively sweet, offering the modern investigators the same sinister trade she offered the pioneers, a ride to the other side. Zach steps forward, his posture rigid with defiance. Zach's crew continue to spread all over the mansion with their investigation communicating all their findings to him. Alongside Dalen, Juwan, and Marcus, they challenge the entity directly, using Holzer's analytical provocation. Dalen suggests that they go out to the cemetery for a spirit box session to find more answers. They demand Eliza prove the spirit world exists and releases the manor's trapped souls. The trap springs. The spirit box erupts into a deafening roar of frantic, violent scratching. Eliza's voice warps, dropping into a guttural, deep, breathy tone that shakes the floorboards. She warns them that the ride is a one-way trip, and the swap has already begun. Dalen isn't satisfied with the results of their investigation yet. He asks, "Tell us more about the mansion's cemetery. Will we find your gravesite out there?" Silence. Then Juan joins in with, "How can we trust what you say when you're making these propositions of the spirit world, but still no proof of what you say?" Dalen notices that Marcus has been quiet since they entered the mansion. "You okay over there, Marcus? It's not like you to be so quiet on our ghost hunts." Shaking his head, Marcus looks up from his notes and says, "Man, I'm crashing out by this alien abduction story that Hinrich Voss been telling me about. My man says that they took him." Dalen asks, "Who took him?" "You know the Greys," Marcus continues. "He was just telling me that after the poker game went wrong one late night and the bar brawl broke out, a group of very tall Greys, 10 deep, came into the bar. They made everything freeze in mid-time. The next thing Voss noticed was that he was back in the bar, but he discovered that he had become a ghost because he couldn't pick up a glass or anything physical in the bar. When the police came in to investigate the scene, He said that he noticed people announcing him and his brother dead at the bar. He witnessed his own body slumping over a table and his brother stretched out onto the floor close by. The bar looked as if a tornado had traveled through it. All of it was reported in the newspapers. Juan and Dalen shot a quick look at each other, then looking back at Marcus. Dalen then asked, "Marcus, how you know about all this?" Marcus looks back down at his notes and says, "Voss told me that we will find the gravesite of the man that cheated his brother that night out there in the cemetery. Once we find the gravesite, he can explain why he haunts the mansion for all these years, and how the Greys located him at the bar." Turns out these alien Greys were specifically looking for him. At first, everyone thought that it was a poker game that had gone wrong. Voss thinks that he and his brother were victims of circumstances that night, and that's why he haunts the mansion's attic. "Well, what's this man's name?" Dalen asks. "I wish that I could tell you, bro, but I can't. I can show you better than I can tell you." Just when Marcus was about to show a map layout of the cemetery to Juan, Dalen, and Zach, the basement descends into absolute chaos. Zach's equipment maliciously malfunctions, throwing sparks before plunging the room into total darkness. He attempts to call his team to see if his iPhone still works. Dead. But then Zach is surprised to immediately get a message on his iPhone that begins to light up and glow. He thought that it must be from his crew. "Yeah, what you got?" "Zach, you're not gonna believe this." "Well, try me." Just then, Zach's crew begin telling him that there's an old black and white film projector that's showing a short film about him. He appears to be around 10 years old. The crew is shaken by this unexpected discovery of the black and white film. Zach could hear the sound of the film projector spinning. Before Zach could respond, the volume immediately begins to go down and makes the sound static. "What? Hey man, say that again." Zach's iPhone goes dead once again. But what happens next chills Zach to his core. The black and white film that his crew was just reporting to him begins to play on his iPhone. Just when Zach was about to show the Ghost Brothers the film on his iPhone, the ground beneath their feet begins to vibrate violently. Several team members throughout the mansion stagger, overcome by sudden, intense fainting spells as the psychic pressure attempts to crush their minds and force the destiny swap. The massive, featureless Shadow Man rises from the floor, blocking the stairs, radiating a freezing aura as Zach and the Ghost Brothers witness it all. Abandoning their analytical approach for pure survival, the daredevil instincts kick in. The Ghost Brothers, Zach and Zach's crew, physically push through the icy barricade of dark energy. They drag their disoriented teammates up the stairs, fighting tooth and nail against unseen hands that tear at their clothes and attempt to pull them back into the deep. Bursting into the foyer, they all scramble out the front door, slamming the heavy wooden threshold shut behind them. Then Marie, Amy, Colin, Sam, Colby, Zach, his crew, and the Ghost Brothers all collapsed onto the gravel driveway, as if the mansion just pushed them all out, gasping the cool night air as they looked back at the towering silhouette of Willow Hill Manor. The estate remained silent and still, its dark windows reflecting the moonlight. The investigators survived, keeping their destinies intact. But as they look back at the imposing structure, they know the terrifying truth. Elias Thornton's architecture remains, waiting patiently in the dark for the next unsuspecting soul. They weren't in the mood to give up just yet. They all get up to brush themselves off and head back towards the mansion. This pivot of events leads Dalen to decide to hold off on the spirit box session in the cemetery for the Ghost Brothers' next visit to the mansion. Moving back up through the house, the group ascends the main staircase to the upper floor. The hallway stretches out before them like a corridor of memories. Marie steps toward the first bedroom. The sound of footsteps echoes through the hallway outside, and a faint shadow flickers at the edge of the light. A shadowy silhouette takes shape, a woman in period clothing, her posture tense but not aggressive. Marie speaks softly to her, and after a moment of shared acknowledgement, the figure slowly begins to fade. They proceed to the final room on the upper floor. The air grows still, and a faint sound, like the soft creak of floorboards, echoes through the room. A shadowy silhouette forms at the far end of the hallway, moving slowly toward them. As it draws closer, its form becomes clearer. A child, small and fragile, caught between the urge to step forward and the fear of being seen too clearly. The energy radiating from the small figure feels woven with quiet desperation. Marie kneels slightly, lowering herself to the child's eye level. Her voice soft and steady. A faint, broken sound escapes the apparitional soft, broken whimper shaped by sorrow, and then it dissolves into the darkness, leaving behind an ache that settles over the group like a memory of something lost. The group gathers near the base of the staircase in the foyer for the final moments of the investigation. Marie steps into the center of the space, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, heaviness settling over the room like a curtain being drawn. A faint glow begins to form in the center of the foyer, pulsing softly. A faint whisper rises from within it, shaped by sorrow and longing. As the team listens intently, the glow flickers one last time, growing fainter until it slowly fades, leaving a gentle embrace of warmth in its wake. Marie steps toward the front door, feeling the subtle vibration of emotional residue beneath the surface. The heavy wooden door creaks open, and a wave of cool night air spills into the room. The group steps outside, their breath visible in the dim light as they take in the quiet stillness. They walk toward their vehicles, their footsteps crunching softly against the gravel. The mansion stands behind them, silent and still, its presence lingering like a memory etched into the fabric of the night. The group said goodbyes and shook hands. The oppressive heaviness has lifted, leaving behind a sense of closure. Now the White Hill Mansion rests, while its haunting stories are ever being told.